Hello, it's Mike Rhyner here, and I want to thank you for joining us on patreon.com. And I do hope that you will check out the Sunset Lounge, because there you can find a vast array of very, very entertaining and engaging podcasts, such as Shippy and Grooves. It is sports, it is topical, it highlights the stories most people probably haven't heard, and they put their own fun twist on things, always guaranteed to make you laugh. Shippy and Grooves at the Sunset Lounge.
Nobody would have thought that I would be the one. Rhyner, sports talk. Baseball.
Oh, with the big mic. Oh, okay. All right, yeah. Okay, now I get it.
We got a lightning strike, boys. What happened over there, Grego? We had a little lightning strike right outside the window.
All right. Here's a tip for all these Americano League teams.
Wait, you said tip?
Yeah, tip.
Okay.
With a P.
Keep jamming.
The ticket, nothing but a big Gen X jerk-off set.
This is a cool night or what?
Although somebody would hear that and go, bullshit.
I'm back, bitches.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Your Dark Companion. We are glad to have you with us this afternoon. We think we've got a very interesting, intriguing presentation for you all today. On this, the day that it appears as though once and for all, although there's been no announcement as of yet. As of, what time is this?
It's 1:01.
As of 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's been no announcement as of yet. But now, once and for all, it appears as though the Cowboys are going to have a new coach next year. We will deal with that later on, some way, somehow. But right now, we have a very, very intriguing fellow in with us to talk about, a guy that I've known for some years now. And if there is one guy who has seen all there is to see, and there's probably more than one who would lay claim to this, but if there is one guy who has been on the ground in the local music scene around here, as it's twisted and turned and matriculated in whatever way it does over the years, the guy with boots on the ground for all of it has been Jeff Liles. Jeff now runs the Kessler. And if you've been to the Kessler, you know what an extraordinary music venue that is. But there's a lot of other history that is attached to this man and local music around here. And that is among the things we want to get into with him today. Thank you very much for doing this. How are you?
I'm good. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. How are things up at the Kessler? You guys pretty busy these days, or?
This is actually the first 2 weeks of January are usually kind of slow. We kind of use that time to regroup and do maintenance on the building and all that. But we're starting next weekend. We'll be firing on all cylinders again.
That's excellent. Kessler is a one-of-a-kind music room, and I guess that's a good place to start because I used to drive by that place for years and years, being an Oak Cliff guy, growing up there and everything. And having lived there as an adult for a good chunk of my adult life, but I would drive by there and there was never anything going on in that building. I didn't know if it was a church or I get that that's what it used to be, but I didn't know who was using it and what for until you guys came along, you and Edwin Cavanis, who has also sat in that very seat that you're sitting in.
Yeah.
You and he got together and put your boots on the ground, decided to do something with it, and have turned it into just an extraordinary small music venue. And you should be very proud of it.
Oh, thank you kindly. Yeah. It's definitely a labor of love. You know, as you were just talking about, before Edwin got it, It had been empty for like 17 years.
Yeah.
It had been just kind of sitting there dormant. And the reason he got the place, I'm sure he probably told you this, his wife owned a dance studio for kids in Oak Cliff, and he got it for her, to be a dance studio. She had like 200 kids that were all taking ballet and tap and all that. And he got that space for her eventually. And then he came across this music editor for the Dallas Observer named Jesse Huey, who also lived in Oak Cliff, whose kid took dance lessons from Lisa.
Yeah.
And just kind of in the middle of a conversation or whatever, Jesse kind of put this idea in his head that maybe you could do live music there.
What kind of experience? I don't know if I asked him this or not, but had he ever done live music before?
No, he was working at Merrill Lynch at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, came from a totally different world. And, I was living in Los Angeles when he bought it. I was managing the Roxy Theater at the time. And when Jesse kind of put this idea in his head to maybe do live music, he said, you kind of jokingly said, you should get Jeff Liles to come, help you with it and get it going. And, this is before I'd ever met Edwin. And Edwin Cole called me a couple of times out there and said, hey, I just got this building in Oak Cliff. And I love working at the Roxy. I was having the time of my life, living in Los Angeles, doing all that. And I was like, that's cool. Good luck with that, or whatever. And then my mom heard me talking to him on the phone and said, will you please just go over there and look at the building? Stop being a jerk, And so I said, okay, I will. And I went over there and looked at it. And truthfully, it looked like an impossible cause. That building had been empty for 17 years. It had no maintenance. I was totally frank with him. I was like, this is going to take 1.5 years or 2 years to fix this thing up and get it presentable. And he's like, I'm ready to do whatever it takes.
Now, had you ever done anything like this before?
Not starting a building not a rehab like that.
Right.
Most of the places that I had worked before in Dallas, like Theater Gallery, that was almost like a hippie commune. Russell Hobbs kind of had a background in construction, so he was always changing that place. During the course of the time that we were open, he was always in there, nailing stuff together and, doing that kind of thing. And with trees, I had been looking at the Trees building for years. When I was working at Theater Gallery, I would walk over to Elm Street. There was nothing going on Elm Street. There was no clubs there yet, nothing. And I would stare in the windows of the Trees building, this empty building that obviously looked like it had been some kind of venue back in the 30s or something, and had this staircase that went up the middle of the building. And there was like one single light. And it just kind of like, you could tell there were like ghosts in there, you could just see that, that it had been something before. And when the opportunity came to do that, I jumped at that, because I loved that building. I'd lusted after that building for 2 or 3 years.
So you're one of these guys who can look at a building and see possibilities.
Yeah.
Huh?
And did you know much about the backstory of Trees, how it started?
No. I when it comes to Deep Ellum, at that time, that is what is known by people who know me as my dark period. Because at that time, I thought I was done with music. I was not really into it, didn't pay any attention to it, didn't go to any local shows or anything like that. If a big show would come around that I would want to see, I'd go to that.
Yeah.
But I did, as far as paying attention to what was going on here locally, I was completely in the dark. What was the first room that you ever booked?
Theater Gallery.
Okay.
Theater Gallery was on Commerce Street. It was 2808 Commerce.
Right.
And then we opened a Profit Bar after that. And then I booked Club Dada for the first 1.5 years it was open. That Club Dada was the first club on Elm Street that actually opened up when the scene started to kind of migrate over from Commerce Street over to Elm Street.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, Trees. And then actually, while I was booking Dada, that's when I got asked to book the Longhorn Ballroom. So I was doing Longhorn. This was like 23 years old, 24 years old at the time. So I was doing Longhorn. I just left Profit Bar and Theater Gallery. I was doing Club Dada, and I was booking the Dallas Hard Rock Cafe with Angus Wynn. So it was kind of crazy for a kid that age who had that reasonably inexperienced.
Yeah.
It was definitely a challenge, and it was also kind of challenging in the respect that the Dallas music scene in and of itself was fundamentally changing. Back during your time period, back before that, most of the clubs were copy bands. You know, there were bands playing Led Zeppelin and ZZ Top and Thin Lizzy songs and stuff. And then when Theater Gallery first started happening, it's shifted to this all original thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the thing. That was kind of the edict that we laid down for Theater Gallery, is to play here, you had to be all original.
Did you have trouble finding bands that could do that?
Not at all. Not at all.
There are
And
a lot of them out there, huh?
they were all young. They were all kids. And a lot of people don't really know this about Deep Ellum, but this is true. And I tell people this, and they're like, huh? The reason why Deep Ellum happened, why it happened at Theater Gallery during the mid-'80s, was you had all these bands that were high school bands from all the suburbs around town. You had Shallow Rain, who was from North Dallas. You had Three on a Hill, who was from Carrollton and Farmers Branch. Mm-hmm. Pleasant Grove was the Trees were from Pleasant Grove. Mm-hmm. You had the Buckpets from Plano. You had End Over End from Highland Park. The New Bohemians from East Dallas. All of these bands had these followings of their friends they went to high school with that would follow them down to this building in Deep Ellum, where it was kind of like a way for them to hide from their parents and hide from their scene back in the suburbs or whatever. All these suburban kids just came here and all made friends with each other and all started singing each other's bands. And even getting into different kinds of music they wouldn't normally listen to. We'd have like Rigor Mortis, who were from Arlington and Irving. They were playing, and these kids from North Dallas who listened to Shallow Rain were there checking out their bands, you know. And New Bohemians fans were into Rigor Mortis, you know.
God, I didn't never realized it was quite that organic.
It was totally organic. And a lot of it just had to do with kids wanting to go to a place that they could kind of have as a best kept secret. You know, we didn't really publicize Theater Gallery at all beforehand. It was all up to the bands to tell their friends to come see them play there.
Yeah.
And because their friends knew what to expect, it wasn't like going to Mother Blues where you would go see a band and they were going to play a bunch of songs you were already familiar with or whatever, the Bijou, Cardis, all those Sneaky Pete's, all those clubs, the bands that played other people's music there.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the criteria. That's what you did or you didn't get booked. So we were exactly the same way. We were all original, or we don't want to hear it, you know.
Yeah. And if you were going to come in there and play cover music, you just didn't book them, huh?
Well, I didn't care if they do like one cover song during the middle of their set just to kind of show where their influences were.
Right.
But not a whole set of, you know, 70s classic rock, you know.
Was there a certain point of inflection where, you know, in the early days of Deep Ellum, where you knew this was going to work? Because I got to think it was kind of tenuous there for a while, you know?
You know, I've never been the type of person to sit there and plan for the future. I always live life day to day. So I was just happy when we woke up and were able to put on a show that night.
Yeah.
And the main challenge to make it work at Theater Gallery was scraping up the money to go get 2 kegs of beer, because we had to have free beer to give away. That was the deal. It was $5 to get in, and you got free beer all night. We didn't have any licenses, no permits, no nothing. It was completely legal, in the same way that Deep Ellum in the 30s was completely illegal during the Prohibition era.
Yeah.
We were acting like it was the Prohibition era, you know. And
Did
that's
you ever get shook down or anything?
of course. We went to jail a couple of times. I mean, it was inevitable. We had to get legal at some point in time.
Yeah.
But for the first 2.5 years, we got away with it.
Do you look back on that now as the best time of your career? Or a particularly favorite time?
It was a blast. It was absolutely fundamentally one of the things that shaped me as a person. But on the other hand, I've had all these other experiences since then that kind of work on a different level, but have the same element of discovery and the same element of satisfaction of doing. But the Theater Gallery thing was completely under the radar, you know, and it was crazy. It was cold. Like, we didn't have HVAC. A lot of times it was really cold. A lot of times it was really hot. You know, the roof leaked. You know, I mean, there were all these daily challenges you had to come up with and deal with. But
Who owned the building back then?
a guy named Don Blanton, and he rented us that building for $750 a month. which today comparatively when Trees opened in 1990, that building was 3,500 a month. So that was a huge, it was we didn't have any way to generate revenue at Theater Gallery. I mean, because we were giving beer away free. We were barely breaking even. The bands each band would get $1 of the $5 that we took in. But I'll tell you what really made Theater Gallery pop was meeting Mark Lee and Danny Eaton from 462. Mark Lee and Danny Eaton were probably the two most influential booking agents or talent buyers in town at the time.
Yeah.
They had done the Hot Club. They originally started out at the Hot Club actually Danny started off with Eaton Page Productions and Mark was a photographer, but their first
Mark also did the Studio Club back in the day.
And he managed Kenny and the Casuals. But the two of them, by bringing this, when new alternative rock, kind of punk rock first started happening and new wave first started happening, they would bring these bands to the Hot Club. And eventually those bands would outgrow the Hot Club. And that's when they started doing shows at the Bronco Bowl. So, I mean, those two venues were so influential. And I went down there and met Mark and made friends with him. And Mark started sending me all these bands to play at Theater Gallery. And that's, the first time the Red Hot Chili Peppers played in Dallas was there. Jane's Addiction, Flaming Lips, all those bands. The first place they played in Dallas was Theater Gallery. And it was because of our relationship with Mark and Danny.
This is Jeff Liles. He runs the Kessler. And if you like what he's doing, you should go down to the Kessler and check out a show. If you like what we're doing or you don't like what we're doing, let us know. You can reach us via chat under the community tab on the Patreon page. That's patreon.com/YourDarkCompanion. Hit us up on social media, on Instagram and TikTok. We are at Your Dark Companion. Facebook, we are Your Dark Companion. And on X, we are at YDC_DFW. Tell your friends, tell your family. We're out here on Patreon, Spotify, and now you can catch special episodes of YDC and What's on Mike's Mind on YouTube. That's at the Old Gray Wolf. That's Gray with an E. At the Old Gray Wolf 16. All right, now let's get back into our chat with our guest here, the great Jeff Liles. So you go from Deep Ellum. You pretty much raise that thing up from the bootstraps and get it on its feet, teach it how to walk, teach it how to feed itself, and everything like that. What happened to you after that?
Well, I got a gig booking the Hard Rock Cafe, and the old Hard Rock Cafe on McKinney Avenue, Isaac Tigert had come to town to open it up. And we'd have these meetings where the corporate guys who run the restaurants, first of all, the corporate guys that worked at Hard Rock hated doing live music because we had to strike 2 sections of tables to create a stage and make it work. So to them, that was all a big hassle.
Right.
So they didn't like me at all. But Isaac was determined to make live music happen at Hard Rock. So I can remember we had this meeting one day where there's a long table, all these corporate guys, and Isaac's sitting at the head of the table, and I'm sitting to his right, and Angus is sitting to his left, and he has this big binder of stuff, and Isaac puts the binder down there and opens it up, and there's this giant bud, like, on top of it. He's like, Jeff, will you roll us a joint? And, like, all of the corporate guys look at me like, who is this guy, and what are we doing now, And
you'd clearly never rolled a joint before.
Right. He's too lazy. He wanted me to do it. So I rolled a big old fat joint. And I lit it up, and Isaac and I were the only 2 people that were smoking it. Angus was looking at me like, what are you doing, or whatever, And Isaac's totally cool, he liked it. And we're sitting here smoking, and this giant cloud of smoke is like coming down the table, and I can see all these corporate guys like trying to get out of the way. But after that, Angus and I had worked together for about a year, we started getting along.
One of the legendary episodes to come out of Deep Ellum was the fact that there are a couple of bands who went on to really, really big things that played down there when they weren't quite so big. One is Nirvana.
Yeah.
One is the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Tell us about those shows and your involvement therein.
Okay. The first time the Chili Peppers came to town, they played for $500. Anthony, the singer's dad, was their road manager. And that afternoon when they came to town, I took them out to my mom's house out in North Dallas so they could wash their clothes. And Anthony and Flea are out there in our backyard jumping on the trampoline. And, I took them over to Bill's Records and introduced them to Bill and all that. And Anthony found that red, white, and blue skirt that he wore all the time. He found that underneath the table at Bill's. So that was kind of like, every time Bill would see a picture of him wearing that, he's like, oh, you got that here, or he was so proud of that.
Wore those a ton back then.
Yeah. Now, the Nirvana show, that wasn't the first time Nirvana played in Deep Ellum, the Tree show that we did. The first time they played before that, they were here about a year before that at this tiny little place called Electric Jungle. Electric Jungle was up the street from Trees, and it was a lot like Theater Gallery. It was kind of an underground place that nobody really knew about. It was all word of mouth or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of those sub pop bands, the first time they came through Dallas, that's where they played.
How did you go about booking bands like that? I mean, did those guys have agents back then?
Oh, yeah. And a lot of the really bigger bands that we did at Trees, like Nirvana, Radiohead, Elliott Smith, Teenage Fan Club, Mark Lee and Danny Eaton funneled those shows to me.
Yeah.
And I had a deal with them basically where I would just give them $1 a head for each ticket sold. And a lot of times they wouldn't even come to the show. The younger bands, they didn't really care about yet until they were going to be in a bigger building that they could actually make some money on. Mm-hmm. So their main objective was to just get them to us, and we would put the show on. To the agent, it looked like 462 was putting the show on. But Mark and Danny were smart enough to know that to make an emerging band happen or whatever, you needed a street-level promoter to get it done. So that's why, and they learned that running the Hot Club. That was just part of the deal. So not all of them, but most of the big shows that were alternative rock shows or whatever, I got through Mark and Danny. Now, a lot of the rap shows I went and got myself. The first two, I just would call up their agents in New York and say, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Chill Rob G, Ghetto Boys, all of those shows, Cypress Hill, I went and got those myself because Mark and Danny had no experience dealing with hip hop artists.
Yeah.
And hip hop was still a brand new thing.
What kind of differences did you run into dealing with the people who handled those artists? If there were any.
Most of the agents that handle the hip hop artists were anxious to get their artists in a room any way they could.
Yeah.
Because they didn't tour the same way a rock band tours. A rock band gets in a bus, and drags a trailer around with all their gear in it and goes from city to city, shortest distance between 2 points. That's the whole thing about doing it. Hip hop artists get on an airplane and fly there, and you go pick them up at the airport, and you take care of their ground transportation and feed them, and you had to do everything. But it was worth it. We were definitely the first venue in town to bring emerging hip hop out.
Did they carry any gear of their own or anything like that?
No. All they needed was turntables.
Yeah.
So it's turntables and microphones. It was mainly just making sure they got to the gig on time.
Wow.
What all would go into promoting the hip hop shows? I'm guessing you did a good amount of the promotion side of things too.
Well, I was doing a radio show on KNON called Life is Hard. That was a mixture of hard rock and speed metal and hip hop. So that KNON was really, people don't know this, but KNON radio station was really one of the first radio stations in the country to play hip hop music on the air. When I first started out, there were 2 stations in the country. One was in New York City, with DJ Red Alert, and then the other one was in Los Angeles, which was K-Day. It was on the AM band. And the stuff that they were playing in Los Angeles was kind of like that Sir Mix-a-Lot type, that kind of hip hop. It wasn't like the real street level stuff that you heard in New York, So when KNON, we had probably 3 or 4 different shows and different DJs who were all playing hip hop music. One of them, Easy Eddie D, is still on the air. He's been on the air now there for 35 years, and KNON fundamentally introduced hip hop music to Dallas.
Wow.
There were the show that came on right before mine every night was called the All Hardy Deaf Party. It was Snake, Big Al, and Casanova Rock. And those three guys had a huge following of people in South Dallas and stuff that were into their stuff. So they were on from 7 to 9, and then I would come on at 9 o'clock, and I had this captive audience of all these people, who listened to the hip hop that they listened to. Those guys went on to become Nemesis. They became like a big regional record deal, sold 500,000 records and all that. But the stuff that I was playing was kind of grimier New York underground stuff, which is different than what they were into. They had kind of this deep South sensibility.
How did you find that music?
What's that?
Sorry, that was a really generic question, but like, how did you discover some of that hip hop, the grimier stuff, the stuff that wasn't being played even on the few stations that were around? Like, it sounds like you went even farther off the path than that.
I'll tell you, this is really crazy. You got to stick with me when I tell you this.
I'll try.
All right. There was a record that came out in 1986 called The Sound of Deep Ellum. It was a compilation record of bands from Deep Ellum. And the woman who put that record together, her name was Kim Bowie. She was a A&R person for Island Records. And Kim came from Kansas. She's totally from Middle America or whatever, but she loved hip hop. And our song on there is the only hip hop song on that record.
Okay.
But at the same time, she had taken 2 or 3 of the bands off this record and was trying to do record deals with them. One of them was the Buckpats. They ended up getting signed to Island. And the other one was DDT, my band. So we would go out to Los Angeles and meet with her while we were doing demos and trying to figure out how this was going to work. And at the same time, Kim, this kid from Kansas, had gone into a roller rink in Compton, California, and discovered NWA. Nobody knew who NWA was. They were very much like what was going on in Deep Ellum. They were kind of like the underground thing in Los Angeles. So she was trying to sign NWA.
So did somebody tell her, go see this? Or
no, Kim
she just wandered in?
That's the way she did that. That's how she ended up in Dallas. That's how she ended up coming here to see these bands. She called me up out of nowhere. Said, hey, can I come see some bands in Dallas? Set up a bunch of showcases. I'm going to come see a bunch of bands. So this is what she did, right? And she introduced us to Eazy-E and NWA and Dr. Dre and all this. And I was out there. We would go out to go eat Thai food with them. They'd never had Thai food before, right? And I remember telling Eazy, yeah, we're going to go have Thai food. He goes, I ain't got no Thai. I'm like, you don't have to wear a tie. It's Thai food. He's like, what's it tied to? I'm like, it's not tied to anything.
Like Thailand.
I'm like, it's from Thailand. Because back then, believe it or not, we didn't really have Thai restaurants in Dallas back then. So I really look forward to going to L.A. I love Thai food, And I can remember taking Dre and Easy and Ice Cube to go eat Thai food. And they're looking at it, they're picking it up and smelling it. I ain't eating that, They weren't into it at all. But one night I was out there with Kim, and I asked her if she knew anybody who had any pot. And Kim didn't smoke pot. But she was like, yeah, I think I know one person we can go ask. So we went over to this guy's house, and it turns out he was a lawyer for Warner Brothers Records. And he had a bunch of pot in his freezer. And so we're sitting over there at this lawyer's house, and I'm rolling up a joint. Neither one of them really wanted to smoke. It was just me by myself, I'm sitting here rolling a joint, and this guy asked me, he's like, what do you do, man? And I was like, oh, I'm in a band in Dallas. And he goes, oh, yeah, really? And Kim goes, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a deal with him with Island or whatever. He goes, well, I want to hear your stuff sometime. And I'm like, yeah, cool. We'll send you a tape. And Kim goes, no, I got a tape out in the car. So she goes out there and gets the tape and plays it for this guy. His name was Jeff Finster. And plays it for him, and he's like, wow, I really like this. Do you mind if I take this tape? And then a couple of days later, he gave it to Dennis Hopper, who was directing a movie called Colors. And Dennis Hopper fell in love with it. He goes, I want this in the movie. We got to put this in the movie. So at the same time, Kim goes back to Dr. Dre, who she's trying to sign to Island, and says, will you remix this for this movie? So Dre remixed our song for $500. And it got in the movie. And in the meantime, they ended up doing a deal with Priority, so they went their way and we went ours. But it was funny, man, because we went out there. We hadn't heard the way the song was being placed in the movie yet. We didn't have any idea how it was going to work. And we went out there to the premiere of the film. It was at Mann's Chinese Theater. And we're sitting there watching the movie, and like 15 minutes goes by. And I'm like, man, I don't even want to, I can't deal with this, And 30 minutes goes by and 45 minutes goes by. And I'm like, they didn't use it. They blew us off, or whatever. And then it got to the very end of the movie and it's right there in the very end, the climactic scene.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was pretty crazy.
Not bad.
Yeah. But that's how I met NWA and how I discovered gangster rap in Los Angeles, which is very much like the punk rock of hip hop music.
You're talking about being in that situation where you're talking to this person and things, I guess things turned the way they did. And you said they went their way, you went your way. Was that disappointing for you, or did you have a lot of high hopes?
I was trying to deal with a whole bunch of different things at the same time.
I know that's why I asked that.
I was still booking shows. I was still, like trying to do this day job thing, being a concert promoter or whatever, And the band, DDT, when we first started, was a hobby. I wasn't like fully invested into it the same way all these other kids in their Deep Ellum bands were like, this was going to be their life, know. Deep Ellum, DDT was almost kind of like it was a hobby.
Yeah.
We didn't expect to end up in a movie, or working with Dr. Dre or any of that stuff, it was just kind of because I bummed a joint off a lawyer one time,
But that's how Jeff Lyle's life pretty much seems to go. Like, he just knows everybody in some
he's
amazing
the kind of guy
way.
who bums a joint off of a lawyer and things just blow up around.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's in a movie.
Yeah. Huge accident.
Man.
So did you like it out in LA, or
I love Los Angeles.
Or when you were, how long did you stay out there?
After I left Trees in '94, I was out there probably for 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
God,
I went to work
it seems like I've heard your name. Long before we knew each other. It seems like I'd heard your name and had been reading your name and reading about you and hearing people talk about you and Jeff Lyles this and Jeff Lyles that constantly.
Well, when I was living out there, I was still repping the artists that lived here. I was still out there trying to get everybody a record deal. I got to tell you the story about how Rigor Mortis got their record deal, because this is another one of those crazy things.
Okay, now for those who don't know who Rigor Mortis is, give us a little background here.
Rigor Mortis is a speed metal band.
Yes.
That were from the mid-cities. They were an incredible band, okay? I'd never heard of them. I was booking the Longhorn Ballroom, and I had booked Megadeth and Motorhead to play 2 different shows there, right? And I'm sitting here in my office one day, and these 2 guys kind of show up in the doorway, 2 big, burly, heavy metal guys. And they said, "Hey, are you Jeff Lyles?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Tell us this, man. Why is Scratch Acid opening for Megadeth?" And I'm like, "Well, because I really like Scratch Acid." They don't sound like Megadeth. And I'm like, "Well, I know. I kind of like to cross-pollinate people, get them in front of audiences they're not familiar. Listen to our tape, man. We should be on that show." I'm like, "Well, put it on the pile there. I'll listen to it again." "No, listen to it right now." And I'm like, okay. So I put it in the jam box right then. And within 20 seconds, I was like, "Holy shit, is that you?" It was so amazing. It was incredible. I immediately took Scratch Acid off that bill and put him on with Motorhead and put Rigor Mortis on with Megadeth. Okay. Rigor Mortis had kind of a sheltered upbringing, maybe. They were very involved in their heavy metal scene, and that was it. They were kind of oblivious to the rest of the stuff that was going on in the world. Okay, after I heard that demo tape, I was completely floored by it. It was the fastest, most amazing, technically proficient thing most incredible demo tape I'd ever heard by anybody. It was just phenomenal. So I sent it to Kim, and Kim Bowie, who had done the Sound of Deep Ringer, she goes, "We don't really do this kind of music. This is amazing, but we don't really do this." And so I started sending it to other people. And this guy calls me up out of the blue, and he's like, "Jeff?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "My name is Michael Alago. I'm in New York. I want to come to Dallas and see some bands." So I was like, "Okay, cool. I'll set up some showcases like I'd done with Kim." Mm-hmm. Alago was the guy who signed Metallica. He was the guy who discovered Metallica. And I knew there was something different about him, just kind of by the tone of his voice. So I decided, you know what? I need to meet with the guys in Rigor Mortis and kind of come up with a strategy session on how we're going to deal with this.
Now, what's the timeline here?
This was 1986.
And he had already discovered Metallica, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Metallica had already, they were on Elektra Records. He was an A&R guy at Elektra. He was the booking agent at the Ritz in New York. So he was very, very tied in with everybody.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I got the sense from talking to him that he might be gay. So I said, if we're going to bring this guy to town and have him meet with rigor mortis, I need to make sure we all are able to put our best foot forward, that we don't say something that might, be uncomfortable or whatever. So I have this band meeting with rigor mortis, right? And in this room about the size of this, is a practice room, and we're all sitting on the floor, Indian style. And I said, guys, I got to talk to you about something. And they're like, okay, what's up? And I said, they thought it was going to be bad news. I said, so the guy who signed Metallica called me, and he wants to come to town to see you guys play. And they're like, oh, stop fucking with us, man. You got to be. And I'm like, I'm not fucking with you. He did. He called me. And I said, and I think he might be gay. They're like, oh, fuck you. The guy who signed Metallica is not gay. And I'm like, I'm not saying he is. I don't know yet. I'm just, he just sounds different than we do or whatever. But whatever the deal is, don't say something stupid. You know what I'm saying? Don't call him on it, or don't, ruin your chance to, possibly get somewhere.
Yeah, just act right.
Right. And they're like, dude, you're fucking with us. This has got to be a joke. And I'm like, no, it's not a joke. This is a real thing that's happening. And so I worried, for the next 2 weeks before Michael got there. I still didn't know yet. I hadn't met him face to face yet. He's a brilliant guy too. He's an absolutely brilliant talent scout and legendary guy in New York. So anyway, he comes to town, and I knew obviously when he got here within 30 seconds he was gay. He was obviously gay, but he's not, he wasn't hitting on anybody or anything like that. He was just different than what they were used to. They'd never met a gay person before. They didn't have any gay friends. They didn't know, this was 1985, 86, before gay folks were prominent, and or whatever. So anyway, after they met him, it was amazing to watch them drop their prejudices and fundamentally change as people. I mean, within 30 minutes of meeting him, he had sat him down and explained to him how the music business works. And it was the most valuable information they ever got in their life, and also they were seeing their own lives kind of transform before their eyes. Even if they didn't sign with this guy or sign with the Elektra or whatever, all of a sudden what they were doing became real. They weren't a garage band from Arlington or Irving or whatever, they had this unbelievable opportunity. So I'd set up all these other showcases. He went and saw rigor mortis and loved him. He was totally upfront with them and said, look, I've already got Metallica. I've already got this other band, Metal Church. I can't sign you, but I'm here to help you any way I can. So they were kind of heartbroken about that. But within 2-3 weeks after that, I already had him hooked up with another A&R person from Capitol who loved him and immediately wanted to sign him. Had the same kind of impact that I had heard when I first heard him. So anyway, when we were walking around the neighborhood that weekend when all the bands were playing, he was going around. We had 2 or 3 clubs set up, the Theater Gallery, Profit Bar, a couple other clubs, Clearview, where bands were playing. And we were kind of escorting Michael around the neighborhood to see everybody play. Sure. And rigor mortis surrounded him like a wolf pack. Like he was in the middle of it. They didn't want anybody else talking to him. They didn't, they just like, it was like something out of the National Geographic Channel or something, watching this like thing happen, this sociological revelation happen, watching them fundamentally change, drop all their prejudices about gay folks, and just treating him like royalty and protecting him. And it was crazy. It was a beautiful thing.
Well, I'll give those guys their due. At least they had the sense enough to know when there's something good going on here for us, let's not screw it up.
Well, they did. They grew up a lot that week. They really did. They started, realizing how business works. It's not just going and playing in a shithole club in Arlington, and hoping for the best or whatever with 5 other bands on the bill. I mean, this was like they were getting up and out of here. And most artists or younger emerging artists, they're part of their community. They're part of the local music scene or whatever. The metal scene was always really isolated. It was just metal bands, and if you were a metal band, that's what you were into, and that was that. Rigor Mortis picked up and left that and became like a Deep Ellum band. Started hanging out with like the New Bohemians and hanging out with these bands that played music that wasn't even remotely like metal. And in return, a lot of these bands who didn't really listen to heavy metal respected their musicianship and respected their chops and the immediate effect that they had on people. When you hear that music for the first time, you're like, oh my God, these guys live in Dallas, They were so good. They were so tight,
That's interesting because when it comes to the metal scene, my sense of it, and I don't know a whole lot about this, so I may be talking way out of turn here, but my sense of it is that as far as musical cliques go, it's a really, really insular bunch.
Absolutely.
That they all know each other, they stay together, and they keep outsiders out.
Right. And they're also all trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
Being faster or more technically proficient or whatever. It was very competitive, but they were still in their scene.
Yeah.
And that was their thing, was their scene. So for Rigor Mortis to have the foresight to actually recognize that we had this emerging scene happening in Deep Ellum that was actually getting bands platformed beyond just being a local band. We were doing records with Island and records with Capitol, and the Buck Pets were signing with Island, and the New Bohemians were signing with Geffen. All these bands coming out of Deep Ellum were actually getting real record deals and getting the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah,
and that they recognized that, and also recognized that if they had just stayed in Irving and Arlington playing over there, whatever, then they would have been fighting it out against all these other bands playing on bills where they only got to play 30 minutes a night. And, yeah, they were smart enough to see that that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. It's been kind of interesting to watch, what happened to the New Bohemians and all these other bands that you talk about who did get a little bit of a break. But a lot of them haven't been able to sustain it. And in some places, there's a situation where something good happens for one, something good happens for another, and another, and another. And kind of a chain reaction develops. Has that happened here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. The music business itself fundamentally changed. Right at the end of the Deep Ellum thing and all these other Dallas bands started getting record deals, the record business in and of itself was kind of at a crossroads because you had this new, the internet was a brand new thing and digital music was a brand new thing. CDs were a brand new thing. And then it wasn't long before, record stores went away, and storefront retail sales went away.
Now, did you see all this happening as it was coming along or I mean, were you at the forefront of this? Did you look at people and say, look, this is happening and it's not like it used to be?
I did. I worked at a place, I didn't have the foresight, but there was a guy here in town named Alan Restrepo, and Alan had Carpe Diem Records, and he was one of the first people in town that recognized that eventually people were going to have to start selling music online. So he came up with this thing called EtherStream. And what EtherStream was basically the same kind of template as iTunes. And what I would do is I would help him find artists to put their music on EtherStream. And this was probably 5 to 10 years maybe before iTunes even came out. Alan.
What year are we talking about here?
90, maybe 80, 89, 88, I think.
Okay.
But he had 2 different businesses. One of them was called W3CD, where he sold used CDs online. And the EtherStream was the one where he sold MP3s online. MP3s were still a brand new thing. Mm-hmm. And then Napster came out. And when Napster came out and people started figuring out how to trade music for free, that decimated the music industry. It decimated the record business from the inside out. So the music business in and of itself were people our age. Back then, the 70s era or whatever, all they knew was how to do radio, retail,
Right.
radio. I mean, that's
The way it had always been done.
that was the template that they knew. You know, you go take this record to a radio station, you get the program director to add it, you hope that they'll play it over and over again, and that's how people went and bought a record. And they go buy an album that had 10 songs on it to get the one song that they really liked. And that $10 cost, you know, was basically for the one song.
Mm-hmm.
So when the business switched to selling songs for $1 a piece, that template went out the door. So that cratered the entire food chain for the record business from the inside out. So all these bands that had done record deals, and in like bands like the New Bohemians case, they had a platinum record with their debut record. You know, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 years later, they're trying to deal with a new configuration in the business, trying to figure out how they're going to make it work.
It's amazing. It was an amazing time back then.
It was. The record business was not ready for that.
No.
They were not prepared to figure out that we're going to have to figure out how to sell music a different way. And when Napster came in and everybody started getting music for free, you could see the backlash from the artists. You could see the backlash from the people that had those old traditional, you know, rack jobber jobs, you know, where they went and stocked the
Right.
record stores and all that. You know, they could just see their life, you know, fading before their eyes, you know. And a few of the smart ones were able to, you know, transition to new ways of doing things. But I mean, we're kind of in the same boat now because, you know, like with Spotify, you know, and these other these other applications that just give music away for free. I mean, it still has the artist and the labels, you know, one hand tied behind their back, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, how do you assess where things are now?
I'm kind of a very principled individual. I won't use Spotify just because of the fact the CEO is a billionaire and the bands aren't getting shit.
Yeah,
You know, that to me, it's just wrong.
that ain't right.
It ain't right. And, you know, people, a lot of times they don't realize what an artist has to do just to make their thing happen. You know, they've got to rehearse, they've got to buy gear, they've got to keep their gear up to date. They've got, you know, there's so many things they have to do just to keep their band going. And then they go do a gig for $500 or something like that, which barely puts a dent in their investment. You know, so these places like Spotify, they're taking advantage of the artist's willingness to want to get out there and sell out. Not really sell out, but, you know, kind of take a kick in the nuts just to do their thing.
The artists are in a place where they're caught in the middle of all this, you know?
They've all got day jobs now.
Yeah.
You know, they all have to have day jobs now because really the only revenue stream still left in the business is publishing. And the only people that participate in publishing are the songwriters.
Yeah.
It's not the whole band.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many bands broke up because there's one guy in the band who writes the songs and he got the fat check and the other 2-3 guys in the band are all sharing an apartment somewhere. You know, because they don't participate in the publishing.
Crazy.
It is crazy, but it's what happens. I mean, the record business could have planned for this a long time ago and you know, taken steps to create a new template and get it going, but they weren't. And it's because a lot of the people were our age, they were ready to retire from the business, really, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They've been in the business for 25, 30 years or whatever, and this whole new thing was a little bit too weird for them. It was too difficult to try and figure out how they were going to carve out a spot for themselves in it.
Let's get back to the Kessler a little bit. What is it about the Kessler that makes it work?
It's a listening room. It's a dedicated listening room, which is something in Dallas-Fort Worth, literally, we had only had one venue like that throughout the history, and that was Caravan of Dreams in Fort Worth. And people really appreciate that. People our age appreciate being able to go sit in a room and peace and quiet and not have somebody behind you yelling or, you know, going there just to get drunk or whatever. Because it's a listening room, it's a destination. You're not going there unless you're going to see the artist.
Yeah.
You know, you're not just going there to hang out. You know, it's
Right.
not like that kind of thing. It's a concert hall, but it's small enough to give you an intimate experience. And for anybody that ever had gone to Caravan of Dreams in Fort Worth, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Where, you know, production is job one, making sure that it's the best sounding room in town. And curation is key, you know, artists that have mad chops, you know, artists that are incredible musicians whose talent speaks for itself. You know what I'm saying? They're not gimmicky. They're not, you know, they're just real artists. And the Kessler, the reason why it has been able to succeed is because we came around at just the right time. a lot of the artists that played here are what I call legacy artists. They're kind of on the downside of their career. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, but they're artists that used to play in much, much larger places.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're 60 years old or 65 years old or whatever, they're playing in rooms that are smaller and more intimate, like T-Bone Burnett, people like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a higher ticket, but it's also a better experience because you're sitting there right next to the stage,
You guys have had the Zombies in there too, haven't
a
you?
couple of times, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've been to both of those, and both of those were just incredible shows.
Yeah, and the Zombies used to be huge.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They used to be huge.
I mean, they had hit records on Top 40 radio for those who
In the
may not
60s.
know them. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 60s. I mean, they go way back.
Yeah.
And another show or another act you've had in there a couple times that I've seen that I really enjoy seeing, and if he ever comes through there again, I will stop down and go, is Marty Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many people know who Marty Stewart is. He's kind of he's
a legend. He's a Nashville legend.
He's a Nashville legend, but he made his bones as a player more than anything else. But now he's kind of fronting his own thing, and he's really, really flashy, and he's really, really good. And it's really, really straight up country too. and I really dig him, man.
Yeah, it's funny you mention him. Marty, I love Marty, and we love having him or whatever. Occasionally, when an artist like that comes to town, they need a runner. They need someone to drive them around town or do it. And for an artist like that, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that we can tell them about the Kessler or whatever. So Marty's tour manager, bless his heart, they have this old school thing. A lot of these older bands have this old thing called Fuck the Runner, where they send the runner off to go do shit that, is completely, it's like the Brown M&Ms backstage with Van Halen type thing. And they tried playing Fuck the Runner with me. They didn't realize I was the guy who was going to be paying them at the end of the night. So they were like, Marty really likes this specific kind of blueberry muffin that you can only get at this truck stop that's on the other side of Fort Worth. And they tried telling me he has to have it. And I'm like, well, I'm not driving to Fort Worth for a fucking blueberry muffin, And they go, no, you really need to do this. We need this show to go off like this. I'm like, look, Marty's show is not going to hinge on a blueberry muffin or whatever. And they were, wasn't until later that night that the tour manager realized I was the guy paying them at the end of the night. They thought I was just some dude, So, yeah, and I got to drive Marty around before he got made up.
Yeah.
He looked like a totally different guy, He has this whole procedure that he goes through to get the hair just like that, or whatever.
So does Shoopy.
Yeah.
No, not really. Not really. Not like that. And I'm not into going to the other side of Fort Worth for a blueberry muffin either.
Yeah.
You might. Maybe for a Jack in the Box taco.
Maybe so. Maybe for a Jack in the Box taco.
They're also good friends with Dean Faring, the local chef here.
Yeah.
So I had to take him to his restaurant or whatever and wait for him outside while they ate. That was a long day, man.
Yeah. I noticed your face didn't exactly light up when I mentioned him.
Well, believe me, I have my autographed Marty Stewart poster on the wall at home. I respect him as an artist and I love him, but I don't hold that against him. He didn't do it. It wasn't his idea. It was his tour manager. You get out there on the road, and you don't even know what city you're in. You don't even, you're trying to do anything that'll give you a little, something to keep you entertained while between sound check and the show or whatever you're looking for. So that's one of the little things that they do, whatever. And I get it. I totally get it. I've been doing this a long time. It's not new or whatever.
Well, you're a good sport, man.
I was a very good sport about it, but I didn't go get that fucking blueberry muffin.
But I respect that you didn't try to just big time them immediately. Be like, I'm paying you guys later, right?
No. I would
just
never
kinda let
pull
them have their
rank like
fun
that.
and-
Never,
Yeah.
ever.
All right, let's just say, for the sake of discussion, we've got a few minutes left here, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What if somebody said to you, Jeff, build and design me a room and get it up and running? What do you do?
I wouldn't do it. Not at this age. You know, because I've already worked at so many different places under so many different sets of circumstances.
But let's just say you did do it. What would you look for? What's important?
Historical significance. I mean, like the Kessler was owned by Gene Autry.
Yeah.
You know,
The Longhorn.
our Longhorn obviously has an incredible history that dates back to 1950. I mean, it's a story that tells itself.
Yeah.
And Edwin loves to tell the story, and I love listening to him tell the story. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but you can tell what his motivation was when he got that place. You know, was to keep that history going, to be part of that legacy.
Right.
And that's very admirable. That's how you know he's doing it for the right reason. He's not doing it to get rich. You know, money has never motivated him for any of these projects that we've worked on, not the Heights, not the Kessler. He recognizes the historical significance of the buildings themselves and recognizes that he can help to create an adaptive reuse type situation for these buildings, which is important. It's great for the community. It's how you write yourself in the history books. And it's a good thing, man. I mean, it's a joy to work for him because of, I know that's what his motivation is.
Boy, that's rare too.
It's very rare.
To get to work for
Very,
a guy
very rare.
whose head is in the right place and is doing it the right way for the right reasons.
I would never, after working at the Hard Rock and dealing with all those corporate idiots, I would never take a corporate gig for the rest of my life after that. And it's also fundamentally what drives us to do what we do with the Kessler, because we know that what we're up against, we're up against Live Nation, we're up against AEG, we're up against these giant corporate monoliths that will spend money on ridiculous shit just to make our lives miserable. Mm-hmm. But I would rather have that ground. Know what I'm saying? That we have the high ground as far as curation goes, as far as treating the artists with respect and recognizing what they're bringing to the table. A lot of these corporate places, I mean, I don't want to sit here and bag on corporate shit, but man, they're driving the price of tickets up so high. They're turning popular music into this elitist thing that only rich people can afford.
I know.
And that's going to kill independent music. It's going to kill the entry level artists that are out there trying to play for a $10 ticket so people can see who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's all about huge concert things, 360 deals where the promoter's making money off the merch sales and all this stuff. I mean, it's just, to me, it's sickening. And I love working for Kessler Presents because that's not our approach at all. I mean, we want to be independent. We want to be just sensitive to all the artist needs. I want to be on a first name basis with our customers. We want it to feel like they're home away from home. The corporate places, they just said, don't stand here, don't sit here. They're always telling you, no, all this prohibitive shit. Don't do this, don't do that, or whatever. We don't do that. We're not going to sit here and tell you where to stand. We'll tell you if you're in the fire lane or whatever, because we need you to,
Sure.
Some people can get out if they need to, but we're not going to make a big deal about it. We're not going to make you feel bad as a person because you're standing in the wrong place, And that's, the corporate thing is so kind of impersonal and sensitive like that. And I'll give you an example. When people come in the theater, when they come in the very first part of the door, almost every venue now, they have you scan their ticket or whatever, like you're a barcode.
Right.
That is so impersonal. We have everybody's name on the list. So when we call you by your first name. We let you know that we know who you are and we're glad you're here. You're a human being and we're so glad you're here, and we respect and admire you for wanting to be in the right place.
That's cool.
We can do that because we're small.
Yeah,
I recognize
right.
that a larger place can't really do that, but that's what sets us apart from what's going on.
Yeah, I've never had that happen to me going into the AAC for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, but I think that's a little different.
We
of
we
course
have
it
so
is.
many regulars, so many people that come to every show, and we know them all by name. And we know exactly where they like to sit. We'll save them a couple seats where they want to sit, before we even open the doors. And another thing we do that no other venues do is we do a buy-sell list at the door. And because we have, especially after COVID, we started noticing that a lot of people were buying a lot of tickets they didn't use. And when you got a room that only holds 400 people, you can't afford to have a bunch of empty seats there, because each empty seat is a $25 bar tab that
Right.
So what we do, if someone say buys 4 tickets and they're only using 2, we take their phone number at the door and help them sell the other 2 tickets to somebody else. If somebody else comes to the door and wants to buy tickets, we say, okay, this person here, we're going to give you their phone number. They're sitting up in the balcony right now. They'll sell you their 2 extra tickets for face value. We don't let anybody scalp them. What we're trying to do is just concierge people being able to get tickets for face value, because they're automatically going to these secondary marketplaces that are jacking up the tickets. And, from our standpoint, it makes it almost impossible. We've got like a standing room only ticket that we're selling for $25, and StubHub or somebody sells it for $250, and these people figure for $250, I better have a place to sit. And then they get there and then we don't have the furniture for them, so you're sitting here, got to like sympathize with someone who just spent $250 to stand at a show when they could have just walked up to the door at 6 o'clock at our place and said, let me get on the buy list. And the first time somebody comes in with 2 extra tickets, they get them for face value and sit wherever they want.
So how does somebody get on the buy list?
Just show up at 6. Yeah, it's that simple. We open up at 6 o'clock, say, hey man, I need to get on the buy list. And then you get their phone number. They go eat or, come back in an hour. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes, 45 minutes or whatever for extra tickets to come in, but they always do. Every night, on any given night, we have between 10 and 25 extra tickets that pop up, and rather than have 10 or 25 empty seats and no bar tab and no income, a lot of people don't really know how the business works. Most of the money that comes in at the door goes to pay the artist,
right,
and pay for the production and pay for the expenses and all that stuff. And our profit margin comes from the bar. Right. So if you don't get the bar sales or whatever, then it's a break-even proposition at best. So what our goal is to make sure there's a butt in that seat every night. That's what we do. And so it's not a problem for us to do, and customers love meeting each other. They love being able to get a ticket for face value they didn't have to pay scalper prices for, and they got a new friend. They just met someone who hooked them up. And that's the kind of thing you can do in a small venue that you can't do in a big one. You can't do in a corporate. In a corporate venue won't do that because they'll sell the same ticket twice if they can.
Sure.
Any way they can. And what we're trying to do really basically is just to make sure our customers know that we're not trying to gouge every penny out of their pocket. We have free popcorn on the bar. We have, we're just trying to message to those folks that we're not here to get all your money. We want you to have a good time and not have to worry about shit like that.
That's why he is who he is. That's why the Kessler is what it is. If you've never been to a show there, you need to go. You need to see it for yourself. He is the great Jeff Liles. Cannot thank you enough for doing this, my friend.
Happy to. Anytime.
All right. Let's see now. That's it. That's all of our other business. We've taken care of it already.
Yeah, we can GTFO.
Okay. Let's GTFO then. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, man. That
was
Thank
awesome.
you, Shuby. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Becca.
We didn't get a chance to talk about Rhyner working at the morning news and all that in the zoo.
We'll have you back on.
Nobody wants to hear about that.
Are you kidding me?
Nobody wants to hear about that.
It's
Believe me.
very important to me. Growing up listening to the zoo.
Well, you're
everything.
very important to me too.
Aw.
Well, thank you.
So let's call that a break even.
Well, the zoo was a fundamental lifestyle thing back then. It was every teenage kid who had a jean jacket, zoo freak sticker on their car. It was a statement of who you were.
It was fun.
It was ultimate.
It was exciting. It was an exciting time.
We did, I don't know if y'all know, we did this thing at the Kessler a couple of years ago called Spirit of Radio, where we had all these DJs from back in the past all come to share their stories or whatever. And the zoo stories are all the best, because you can just tell. To this day, 40 years ago or whatever, I can still remember the song transitions, from Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side to David Essex Rock On, or Roxy Music's Love is the Drug, and to David Bowie's Golden Years. They would transition those songs together all the time. And I also knew whenever they put Kraftwerk on or Alice's Restaurant that they were on the roof smoking weed.
Yeah, either that or they're going to the bathroom, one or the other.
Or Kashmir.
Yeah.
Any of those songs that are like 10 minutes long,
Right.
that are enough to get you out the door, and get you up on the roof.
You had your Torch That Buell songs or the Go to the Bathroom songs, for sure.
And it was funny, too, because the zoo was in the same building as Channel 8 News. And so you had these two kind of competing cultural, straight edge people that are kind of mainstream Preston Hollow folks. And then you had these freaks, these long-haired guys. And even underneath the umbrella of the zoo, you had this one guy, George Gamark, who was totally different than everybody else at the zoo. He was this real nerdy guy who, he introduced new wave and punk rock music to Dallas on the radio. And the only time slot I could get was Sunday night in the middle of the night or whatever, because they figured nobody else was listening.
Yeah, the rock and roll alternative.
But George managed to take that time slot and turn it into a national thing. There were people, all over the country that knew about him and knew about that show. And he brought, everybody from U2 to all REM, all those bands. I mean, he brought them to the attention of Dallas people.
For a lot of people, the first time they heard those bands was on the rock and roll alternative.
Yeah.
Either there or just some way, one way or the other, through him.
Yeah, and where he got his idea and his way of doing things. There was a DJ named John Peel. You know who John Peel is?
I don't think so.
John Peel is a British DJ who was kind of like the British George Gamark. I mean, he was the guy who broke all that new music. And George would get these tapes of John Peel's show and listen to what was on them. And then, kind of program him in his stuff. That's where he learned about a lot of the stuff. So John Peel was famous. But here's the weird thing. John Peel lived in Dallas for a while. And he was a DJ on WRR. He was one of the first reporters that reported on the Kennedy assassination.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and he was a
Did
young
not
guy.
know this.
Yes, he was a young guy. He was kind of a cub reporter and an announcer on WRR, the classical station. And he was one of the very first people that broke the news about John F. Kennedy. And then he went back to England years later and became this national radio institution there. When you listen to his show, it's like, oh my God, it's like listening to George Gamark's show. Their voice had the same inflection, the same way they described artists and introduced them to people or whatever. And John
Next
Peel.
time I see George, I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah, ask him about
See
John
what he
Peel. He'll
says.
go on and on about it because now that enough time has passed. Back then, he wouldn't tell you that's where he was getting his music and stuff like that because he loved the idea of being the one to introduce everybody to it. So, but.
Well, he does get credit for that for a lot of people.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
I mean,
you can tell there's other DJs in town that he influenced too.
Yeah.
Like Jeff K.
Oh,
Jeff K sounds just like George on the radio.
Of course. But it had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And around here, that somewhere was with George Gamark.
I can remember when George played the Beastie Boys for the first time. That was the only time I ever heard him take the needle off a record and say, nope, we'll never hear that here again. I still give him shit about it or whatever. He goes, no, I didn't do that. And I'm like, dude, I was listening. I heard. It was fight for your right. It was fight for your right to party, and it was just like, okay, that's not George Gamark's style, but I could tell he was just trying to play something nobody had ever heard before. And of course, I went and played it on my radio show the next week,
Well played.
Well, Jeff Liles, thank you, man.
Sure.
It's been a blast having you down here, and
Sorry, I
you
snuck
keep
up
doing
your
what
house.
you're doing. But that's
Playboy.
okay. That's all right. We'll find a way to work around it somehow.
Fumigate.
All right, that is your Dark Companion for today. We will see you next time.
All right. I'm gonna go take my pants off.
Your Dark Companion is a Stolen Water Media presentation.